On today's show, the Capitals are the first team in the National Hockey League to clinch a playoff spot.
You're Locked On Capitals, your daily podcast on the Washington Capitals. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Well, hello and welcome into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Dan Holme. I've covered the Capitals for the last 3 seasons for Locked On and various other outlets before that. I'm also the host of the weekly show called The Capitals Minutecast, available wherever you find your podcasts. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. So in this edition of Locked On Capitals, we talk about the Capitals are the first team in the NHL to clinch a playoff spot. Let's hear it. And what a difference a year makes. Last season, the Capitals were the last team to clinch a spot. This season, they are the first team to do it. I'll talk about that a bit later. I'll talk about Aliaksei Protas. And is he worth the money? It's an interesting piece that was out there recently as he was talking about that contract that he signed somewhat recently. And he even said, am I supposed to be making that much money? I'll talk about that a bit later. I'll talk about Tom Wilson as he joins the 30-goal club at 30 years old. Tom Wilson, who is aging like a fine wine, continues to knock it out of the park. But the big story, of course, the Capitals picking up a big win over the Flyers. The Islanders game having to go to overtime, which means the Capitals clinched a playoff spot. Quite an accomplishment. And I want this to be on the record. All the people last summer that said the Capitals weren't going to do anything, even some of my fellow Locked On hosts said, we don't know how to tell you, Dan, but the moves the Capitals made, they weren't enough. As it turns out, the Capitals knocking it out of the park. Now, to be clear here, I'm not etching their name on the side of the Stanley Cup as of yet, but a really good sign for this team. And let it be clear here, how the Capitals got in the position that they're in right now is it was the moves that have been made the last couple seasons. I'm going to start talking about bringing in Spencer Carberry, the perfect coach at the perfect time for this team. Absolutely genius. And then kind of just the things that happened out of chance. I'm talking about Nick Backstrom. I'm talking about TJ Oshie going on the LTIR, opening up money. Evgeny Kuznetsov's contract getting terminated. All of a sudden, the Capitals had some money to go out and get some really great players. And even though these are great players, these are players that former GM Brian McClellan said are risky moves. Well, it does appear as though those risks have paid off. I'm talking about Pierre-Luc Dubois, who was met with the most skepticism, Jacob Chikrin, Duhaime, Radish, Logan Thompson, just that part of the equation alone, but also the young players that have taken their careers to the next level. I'm talking Connor McMichael. I'm talking Aliaksei Protas, Alex Ovechkin doing truly great things. Tom Wilson putting up 30 goals for the first time of his season, or his career rather. A lot is going right for the Capitals this season. That is what got the Capitals in this position right now. The makings of a perfect storm, if you will, in a good way, that put the Capitals in the position that they're in. And the icing on top, of course, is that the Capitals found a way to win the game tonight. 100 points they have now. Pretty stunning. What this team has put up. And just talking about the Flyers game here for a moment before I really dig into it is, it was a game that they let the Flyers into it in the third period. It's almost like they were running a blitz play, the Flyers, that is, in the NFL. It's like all of a sudden they turned on a dime, and it was a full-on blitz attack of the Capitals, and the wheels started to wobble for the Capitals. It could have definitely gone the other way. Now, to be clear here, would have just meant they would have clinched it in another game. But to be clear here, the Capitals, they played well the first 2 periods. The third period, though, was a bit dicey. It's playing that full 60-minute game that we talk about. They did not do that tonight. They were able to batten down the hatches. John Tortorella was doing Tortorella stuff. He was a lawyer out there going, nah, that doesn't look right. No, timeout. I want to take a look at that. Twice it worked out for him. So it was definitely a unique game for the Capitals in a lot of different regards. And if you take a look at last year, who was the team that the Capitals had to play? You guessed it, the Flyers. So let's do it. Let's take a deep dive into the game tonight and what got the Capitals in this position. A lot of things had to go well, like I talked about. The Capitals had to win. The Islanders, that game had to go to overtime or they had to lose. In any event, the Capitals are punched their ticket for the playoffs. A lot of excitement. Now, the Capitals battled their way hard to get this 3-2 victory, and battled hard, you might say. The Philadelphia Flyers aren't one of the better teams in the National Hockey League, but if there's one thing I know from covering hockey for a while now, and just being a fan of hockey for much longer, is John Tortorella gets the most he possibly can out of his players. And that was apparent tonight. You better play 110% or you're going to be sitting on the bench. That was apparent. Now, the win isn't just any victory. It marks an important milestone in our season. Like I talked about with this win, the Capitals clinched that playoffs spot. Now, what a turnaround compared to last season when we were the last team in, and almost biblical in proportion. And it's clear the Caps are on a roll and we're loving every minute of it. And, the bigger question, of course, now is who is the Capitals? Who are they going to play in the first round of the playoffs? I could go a lot of different directions, but I don't want to get too ahead of myself. The Capitals still have some games that they really should play well. I know they're a lock to be in the playoffs, but still playing some really sound hockey is what it's all about. Now let's talk about numbers. With this win, the Capitals have hit 100 points with a fantastic 46-15-8 record. Throwing them up, shooting them down. That's what the Capitals are doing. That's a massive achievement, and it happens faster than most in franchise history, matching the second fewest games taken to reach the century mark. And it's quite incredible what this team has done. It's incredible to think that this is our 10th season with 100 or more points in the last 14 seasons, tying us with the Boston Bruins for the most during that stretch. And one of the things I've talked about on the show is I think it's easy to become spoiled as Capitals fans, like, oh, woe is me. We missed the playoffs a couple seasons ago. Listen, the Capitals are still one of the best to do it, but not to get lost in all of this. I'm riding on a high right now. The Capitals clinch their spot to make it to the playoffs. What shouldn't get lost in this, as well as Alex Ovechkin, you guessed it, netted another goal. Quite an accomplishment. Ovi dazzled us again, scoring his 35th goal of the season and his 888th of his career. He is inching ever closer to Gretzky. Will it happen this season? The runway in front of him is a bit more limited than it was before. Now, he's getting even closer to breaking Wayne Gretzky's all-time record of 894. Now, you take a look at it, Ovechkin's performance is nothing short of remarkable. 52 goals in 78 games against the Flyers. That's that inside analytics that I talk about. Sometimes it doesn't make sense, but Ovi plays really well against certain teams and certain venues. That is true in this case as well. And at 39 years old, he's tied for the fourth in the NHL in goals this season. So aging like a bottle of wine. Father Time is undefeated nonsense, I say. Since turning 35, he's netted a staggering 182 goals in 327 games, the highest goals per game rate among players age 35 or older in the NHL. How did he get here? Adjusting on the fly. He's not training like he was when he's 27 years old. He's a 39, darn near 40-year-old man that you have to adjust your approach. And it's paid off, as was made apparent. Other key players and contributions. Now, the energy was electrifying as Ovechkin opened the scoring late in the first period. Following that, Anthony Beauvillier in our fourth line really stepped up. Beauvillier in particular, who I'm going to go ahead and say another masterclass job by Chris Patrick. Just taking a look at what he did, people like Anthony Beauvillier, that's all the Capitals did at the trade deadline. he has been a hand-in-glove perfect situation for the Capitals. Beauvillier registered assists on both Duhaime's 8th goal and Mangiapane's goal that pushed the lead to 3-0. I'm loving his game, and I was pretty bummed when Ethan Frank wasn't in there, but I'm pretty happy with what we have seen from Anthony Beauvillier so far. What is this going to mean for him in the long term? I don't want to get ahead of myself, but he has definitely been a key ingredient. And tell me if you had Anthony Beauvillier on your bingo card as a player that the Capitals should pick up on the trade deadline. I'm going to go ahead and call nonsense. But teamwork is what makes the dream work, as they say. I actually hate that saying, but even though we saw a little drama in the third period when the Flyers closed the gap with a controversial goal pulling them within one, Charlie Lindgren had our backs, and Charlie Lindgren was, rather irritated, as it did appear that one of those goals was goaltender interference in particular. But like I said, John Tortorella was the lawyer out there tonight, just challenging a lot of different plays and successful. And I think that emboldened him. And at the end of the day, he's fighting for his team. He's fighting for a team that is going to go nowhere. Also worth mentioning is Aliaksei Protas, like I'll talk about later in the show, who extended his point streak to 3 games and contributed greatly to the offensive push. You take a look at it again. I don't think anyone saw going into this season that Aliaksei Protas was going to be putting up the numbers that he has. Stunning. TVR and Matt Roy also chipped in with assists, with Roy tying his single-season career high in points. So in conclusion, what an evening as a Capitals fan, what they were able to put up, a lot of excitement. The Capitals clinching a playoff spot, and to start the season, people were saying maybe they'll be a wild card team, maybe. So it's interesting how those things have changed. But let's hear it to Chris Patrick. Let's hear it for Brian McClellan, Spencer Carberry, the leadership, and that everything goes down from there. You know what I'm talking about? It's a pyramid, and everything is going to go down, and then it's the standout players, the additions, that kind of thing. A really great effort this team has put together this year, and this is just the beginning. We haven't even started the playoffs yet. I think I'm going to have to pace myself a little bit here. All right, so coming up here after the break, we'll talk about Tom Wilson as he joins the 30-goal club. Yes, aging like a fine wine he is. I'll discuss straight ahead.
Did you know getting a good night's sleep is the #1 recipe for long-term success in life? I didn't. It took me way longer to realize than I'd like to admit. It was years of tossing and turning. I was always tired. I never felt like I could live up to my potential, but not anymore. Thanks to Bear Mattress. I used their sleep quiz and I matched with the Elite Hybrid. It's perfect for side sleepers like me. Now I wake up energized. I'm getting deeper sleeps and I'm ready to attack the day. No matter how you sleep, Bear Mattress has a match for you with a focus on recovery, cooling, and pressure relief to upgrade your sleep and improve your overall quality of life. Go to bearmattress.com and use promo code LOCKEDONNHL at checkout for 40% off site-wide. This offer is not available anywhere else. You have to use my promo code on the very last page of checkout to get this discount. That's bearmattress.com and use promo code LOCKEDONNHL for 40% off site-wide. Bearmattress.com, promo code LOCKEDONNHL.
All right, welcome back into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. You can find me over on Twitter. It's at DanCaps218. You can find the show on Twitter. It's at Locked On Caps. So in this next segment here, we're talking about the man himself, number 43, your future captain, Tom Wilson, as he has hit the 30-goal mark for the first time in his entire career. And as a Capitals fan, even before I was a podcaster, I have had the great opportunity to watch his career grow from his very first game in the NHL to where he is at right now, a 30-goal scorer. Still has the physicality, Doesn't drop the mitts quite as often as he used to, but doesn't need to. And I take great joy talking to some people that I've talked to over the years that kind of pigeonholed Tom Wilson as just this tough guy, this goon. You've heard the goons. I'm talking Reeves, Maroon, Rempe, these kind of guys, these one-trick ponies where they're tough, and that's it. But as far as Tom Wilson is concerned, he is proving to the NHL at large what kind of player he really is. For us in the DMV area, the Capitals fans, we know what kind of player Tom Wilson is. Does he have physicality? For sure. Does he have leadership qualities? Yes, he does. But to add to that list, he is also a great goal scorer. And I think that he can't be denied anymore, right? That's the big thing, is that the stats speak for themselves and ultimately why we love his game. So let's dive into that in this segment here. We're diving into the remarkable journey, and that's what I'm going to characterize it as, a journey. As he was that tough guy to start. He was still a great goal scorer. I mean, don't get me wrong, to start his career. But he had a lot of that youthful exuberance where he felt like he needed to challenge everyone in the league at any given moment. You think you're tough, you're not tougher than me. So his journey to where he is at right now, who has truly transformed his game over the past few years. Recently here, he hit a significant milestone by scoring 30 goals in a season during that big win over the Red Wings. And it's just a great feeling to see him come into the player that you ultimately knew that he is. And like I say, it's great to prove to everyone at the NHL at large what kind of player he is. But focusing on goals, what's really interesting is that Wilson didn't initially set out with that specific goal in mind. Of course, I mean, if that was the case, you'd say, I want to score 40 or 50 goals. But as he got closer to that 30-goal mark, it became a focus for him. And what does that mean? To get a 30-goal mark, that means you're going to have to turn down some guys that want to fight you. Some AHL call-up guy that's trying to make a name for himself, like, yeah, you're tough. I'm the king of the AHL. I'm going to fight you. These Rempe-esque type players that he realized that he was better served to be out on the ice, helping his team score goals than in the penalty box, or even worse, up in the press box as he was suspended in his younger day. He's logging more ice time than he ever has and has been on fire this season with points in 7 of his last 8 games, helping the team to an impressive 7-1-0 record during that stretch. And in clear transparency here, I'm recording these final 2 segments here before the game tonight against the Flyers, but he has gained the praise of his teammates as well. Fellow tough guy Brandon Duhaime had some great words about Tom Wilson's impact, calling him an incredible, effective, and tough guy to play against. And that's even what, in a lot of ways, makes him greater than, the greatest goal scorer in the NHL right now. To score a lot of goals is important, but to have that physical intimidation factor, that is something that cannot necessarily be taught. It has to be authentic, and that snarl to his game is authentic. It's just a bonus for me that he can score goals. Dylan Strome echoed those comments as well by labeling him as one of the premier players in the league. He highlighted Wilson's versatility and how important he is to the Caps' success, making him a player that teammates rally around and opponents certainly fear. And we've seen that from Tom Wilson, haven't we? If you want to fight a young guy on the team, if you want to, just really take advantage of a certain player, you're going to have to answer to the sheriff, number 43. But he's gained quite a reputation now that he doesn't even really need to drop the mitts. He just has to skate in the vicinity, and sometimes these situations will disperse. His impressive stats don't just reflect personal achievement, but also the collective dedication of the team. And why most people say that he is the front runner, of course, to be the next captain. Even the current captain, Aliaksei Ovechkin himself, has said that he sees Tom Wilson as being the future captain. A 30-goal scorer, the leadership qualities, there's a lot to love. And, a lot of this, goes to Spencer Carberry, and he has sung his praises as well, mentioned that the milestone is a testament to Wilson's unique playing style and hard work, a significant accomplishment that he'll always carry with pride. And like I've referenced earlier in this segment here, is that oftentimes these tough guys, that's all they are, is tough guys. For him to truly grow into a great hockey player, to still have that physical edge, but score goals is quite something. So let's not forget how far Wilson has come from being known primarily as a heavy hitting style to now being recognized as a top winger and potential leader on the team. He's shown he can perform at an elite level in the National Hockey League. And ultimately, he's committed to the Capitals and understands the need to continuously improve, especially with the younger talent pushing to make their mark. And one of the things that he had said in an interview before was that it's funny for him to not be the young guy in the team. He's one of the older type guys on the team. And he goes, but I don't feel like it. So that sometimes, when he sees the young guys on the team, he feels like he can just mix it up with them. But then he realizes, no, that a lot of those young players are now looking up to me, that maybe the same way he did to Aliaksei Ovechkin and those kind of players. But for him, it's about self-reflection and appreciating this journey, especially considering his time with the team, including the 2018 Stanley Cup win. And, the Capitals are in an excellent position right now. And how far are they going to go into the playoffs? Is there the chance that they can win another cup? I think that anything is possible. The competitive spirit within the team is palpable. And you take a look at the players that want to outdo each other. One of the things that Spencer Carberry had said as well is that Connor McMichael, a fierce competitor, Aliaksei Protas, I'm talking Pierre-Luc Dubois, that I think that there is a certain one-upsmanship that, you want to keep pace. You want to be a guy that's pulling your own weight. You don't want the rest of the team pulling you along. And I think that competitive spirit is what has driven this team, Tom Wilson, and the team as a whole along. So just to wrap up this segment, it is a really big accomplishment, and I'm really happy that Tom Wilson has been able to do what he has done and put up those big goals, because to just be perceived as a tough guy with no talent has to be difficult. But, the good thing about it is that he signed that new extension here somewhat recently. So we do have number 43, Tom Wilson, on the team for years to come. And just looking back on that, there was a lot of question for me. Is he going to test the open market? He said that, it's Capitals, Capitals, Capitals. And I was a little bit skeptical, because sometimes when you back up the Brinks truck, you're like, whoa, maybe I am interested. But as it turns out, he is totally invested in the Capitals. I think that he saw the lay of the land. He saw that Alex Ovechkin is getting a bit older, and he probably saw in himself that he could be that next captain. And, even looking back on that contract, that was met with some skepticism. Some people said the term and the amount was too much. If you want one player that's worth every single cent that he gets, for me, it is Tom Wilson. All right, so coming up here after the break, we'll talk about Aliaksei Protas, who signed a new deal relatively recently. And I remember at the time, some people said that's too much. If you take a look back on it, Aliaksei Protas isn't the Protas that we see today, that even myself, Dan, I questioned the contract. Did they pay him too much? I'll break it all down straight ahead. Daylight savings time snuck up on us again, and if you're feeling that lost hour of sleep, 5-Hour Energy has your back. The extra sunshine means more time for fun, but sometimes you need a little boost to power through the day. Whether you're staying up late watching the NCAA tournament, squeezing in a round of golf after work, or just trying to keep up with your busy day, 5-Hour Energy gives you that quick, refreshing pick-me-up whenever you need it. I've been staying up late watching all the tournament action, and 5-Hour Energy helps me keep up with the day. Sometimes I'm recording these podcasts till 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock in the morning, and I have to be up at 5:30. So sometimes I reach for a 5-Hour Energy as I need a boost for my day as well. Head to 5hourenergy.com to find over 15 flavors to choose from, including watermelon, blue raspberry, and peach mango, and you can build your own 12-pack or 24-pack delivered right to your door. Need one now? Grab a 5-Hour Energy shot at your local grocery or convenience store. They're available everywhere, so stock up today to stay energized.
The NCAA tournament is here, and so is the bracket breakdown.
Locked On Podcast Network and Amazon Fire TV channels are teaming up to deliver NCAA tournament coverage like never before. Watch studio shows featuring former players and Locked On's local experts as they guide you through every upset, buzzer beater, and bracket matchup.
Stream it all for free on Amazon Fire TV channel. Search Bracket Breakdown to see it all for free.
It's your team every day.
All right, welcome back into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. The best way that you can help grow the show is to subscribe to Locked On Capitals on YouTube and comment anything down below. All right, in this next segment here, we're talking about Aliaksei Protas, the man himself, a guy that is putting up big goals this season. And I know I've talked about him quite a bit here recently, but I think he deserves to be talked about as he has seen his career take it to the next level. And it wasn't too long ago that he signed that somewhat newer contract, and there was a lot of questions. Or what are they doing? I mean, this guy on paper is supposed to be good, but up until that point, we didn't really see the full Aliaksei Protas that we see today. So, I was a bit skeptical of it, but as it turns out, the man himself, Aliaksei Protas, well, he was even like, are you sure you guys want to pay me this much money? That's what we're going to dive into in this final segment of the show, talking about Aliaksei Protas, who signed, relatively recently an impressive 5-year contract extension with the Caps worth $16.875 million, averaging about $3.375 million a season. And for me, I guess what it was all about is that that's a pretty extensive contract. There's a lot of term and a decent amount of money for a guy at that point that we didn't really know who he was going to be. I mean, let's face it. I mean, unless you had a crystal ball and you were able to look in the future, I don't think anyone saw what we have seen from Protas this season. So just taking a look at it here, can you believe what the Capitals got him for? It's almost kind of starting to turn into a bargain, if you can believe it. It really shows how much faith the Caps had in his potential. And that's former GM Brian McClellan. And it's the coaches that are like, yeah, there's something about that guy. If we even take a look back to when Protas first joined the team in camp those few years ago here, that there was no big plans for him to make the team. He was just going to, come to camp and then be, set off to Hershey. But he played so well that the Capitals couldn't afford to send him down. He was that great. But interestingly, Protas, the man himself, was pretty surprised by the new deal as well. And it's interesting. I think that if you come, and I don't know his history, but I'm guessing he's not used to making millions upon millions of dollars, that, there's got to be a certain question. Like, am I worth this kind of money? In a recent piece here by Sports Express journalist Igor Rabinir, he even questioned his agent, Dan Milstein, asking if he was being overvalued, saying, quote, "Isn't that too much for me?" unquote. I think that is a humble attitude. And what speaks volumes about what kind of person he is intrinsically. He is not a guy that's used to coming from a lot of money. And to assess yourself accurately, even maybe undervalue yourself, is an interesting take. Instead of pushing for more money, Protas felt he deserved less. And in his own words in that interview, he shared his disbelief, saying, quote, "It's just that I've never had any crazy statistics and I've never seen such sums in my life," unquote. He was expecting, of course, a much lower deal. And when Milstein returned with a contract, Protas could not believe it. And good for him. I guess that if we didn't see any increase in his performance, you might be thinking to yourself, well, maybe he was right. Maybe they are paying him too much. But he has taken his career this year to the next level. When asked if the amount he wanted from the Caps was below what he ended up signing for, he chuckled and said, quote, "Much, much less," unquote. Just to put things in perspective, at that moment, Protas was only 23 and playing in his first NHL season. That was the Capitals. That was Brian McClellan putting a lot of faith in, at the time, an unproven commodity, finishing with 18 points over 42 games while primarily skating on the third line. And not to get too ahead of ourselves here, to start this season, we thought that he might start on the third line. He just really has taken off. We've seen him play on the second and even the first line. And it's ultimately about him rising to the challenge. His response to the contract has really sparked something in him. He said, quote, "Since I've felt a huge responsibility, unquote, I had to try to work off this money to the fullest and show that it's not for nothing, and they trust me so much," unquote. And like I say, a leap of faith put into Aliaksei Protas, but he has delivered big time. And how has he delivered? Well, I would say that he has earned every penny of it this season. Fast forward to this year, like I said, to start off the season, many people projected him to be on the third line. I myself projected him to be on the third line. And Protas, the man, has completely exceeded my expectations and everyone else. So what has he done? He's racked up 61 points, 29 goals, and 32 assists in just 68 games. And to think, we still have some games left to play. That is a new single season NHL record for points by a Belarusian-born player. So quite an accomplishment. And he's not just contributing, he's leading the league in plus minus with a staggering plus 42 ranking and ranks high in both 5-on-5 and even strength points. And, if you are an everydayer of the show, I've spoke about that. Goals that are fair and square. It's not power play goals. He's putting up big goals, just good goals. I hate to say that, legitimate goals where it's 5-on-5, where it matters the most, and what he's been able to do. And I think a lot of it is playing with Pierre-Luc Dubois. I think a lot of it is playing with Alex Ovechkin. That's the kind of environment that helps players grow. And you take a look at it, the market value and future potential, I think we're just starting to see the tip of the iceberg of Aliaksei Protas, if you can believe it. The Athletic even estimates Protas's current value at $8.7 million, which means he's outperforming his contract by over $5 million. Incredible. And he is not a guy that's resting on his laurels. It's about building trust and reflecting on his journey. He expressed, quote, "At first, the contract actually caused increased responsibility and excitement. I wanted to prove that it was not in vain, that they believed in me," unquote. And you see a similar attitude in his younger brother, Ilya, as well, at some point joining the Capitals. Imagine both the Pro brothers, the Protas brothers, if you will, on the team. It's quite an exciting thing to think about. And it's clear the trust from the coaching staff has given him the confidence to shine even when mistakes happen. And they're going to make mistakes. And that's one of the things that I like about Spencer Carberry, that's a lot better than Peter Laviolette, for example, is that if you make a mistake, it's okay. Don't keep making them. Learn from that mistake, but don't get too down in the dumps. I still have faith in you. So looking ahead, what does this mean for the Capitals and for the man himself, Aliaksei Protas? Well, it looks like they've got a bright star in Aliaksei Protas. I know they do. It's about building on that success, though, right? That we have seen great things from him this season. We're hoping to see that in years to come as he has this new contract. And, as long as Spencer Carberry's here, as long as this team is playing the way it is right now, I think the sky's the limit for Protas. Don't you guys think so? Just a really great time as a Capitals fan in this episode, talking about the Flyers game, talking about Wilson and how he's outperforming, and also Aliaksei Protas outperforming, what anyone had thought this team or these individual players were going to put up. Quite exciting times for me as a Capitals fan. All right, once again, I want to thank you for joining me on this edition of Locked On Capitals, your only daily year-round podcast covering the Washington Capitals. And I want to thank all of you that listen on the audio side and watch this on YouTube. You are what makes this show successful. When you're done here, head on over to Locked On NHL, as they have you covered 5 days a week, covering all of the NHL, available wherever you find your podcasts and on YouTube. All right, once again, I want to thank you for joining me on this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Dan Holme, and I'll talk to you again next time.